This is an electronic shelf label, or ESL. They display the price of an item in a store using a digital screen instead of paper or plastic. The global electronic shelf label market size was estimated at $1.85 billion in 2024 and is projected to reach $7.54 billion by 2033.
It's definitely an industry that is looking at significant double-digit year-over-year growth for the foreseeable future.
ESLs can already be found at Whole Foods, Amazon Fresh, Kroger, stores in Canada, Europe, and Asia, and more.
Electronic store labels really improve the operational efficiency of supermarkets.
But some lawmakers fear that electronic shelf labels will lead to dynamic pricing that could hurt consumers.
The concern is that this is going to be used to kind of take advantage of or gouge consumers in times of acute demand.
For example, is the price of ice cream going to go up when it's really hot outside?
But industry watchers say that isn't happening, and ESLs may actually save consumers money.
The facts show there is no surge pricing currently occurring.
Consumers are probably on the margin likely to benefit from these technologies rather than suffer from higher prices, which appears to be the big fear.
So, what do electronic shelf labels mean for the future of in-person shopping? Walmart, the largest grocery seller in the U.S., plans to roll ESLs out to 2,300 stores by 2026. Retailers could use ESLs to implement dynamic pricing, a strategy where companies use data and AI to adjust prices in real time based on various market conditions, including demand, competition, and even consumer behavior.
You have hundreds of pounds of bananas that are getting past or close to past their goodbye date. Would you rather the store maintain the current price and have consumers pass them by, and then later an employee of that store has to come and use their scarce labor to collect all of that and then throw it away, resulting in massive food waste? Or would you rather have dynamic pricing that drops that price to 10 cents per pound? And then essentially what you're doing is you are giving away the product quasi for free to have the consumers do the labor of getting rid of the goods for you. And so that's an example of how kind of dynamic pricing can work in a way that's beneficial both for the store and also for the consumer.
Fusion Group, the European vendor behind Walmart's ESLs, says that their electronic shelf labels can instantly communicate deals and savings, display nutritional and allergy information on the screen, and help retailers limit their carbon footprint. Norwegian grocer Coop says that their implementation of ESLs has resulted in a 15% increase in customer satisfaction with product information. Walmart's ESLs allow employees to use their work phones to efficiently change the shelf price.
Just go to the app, press a button, and all the prices are updated automatically.
Their ESLs also have LED lights that help store workers prepare online orders and restock shelves faster. They blink to guide workers to the shelf location. One study found that dynamic pricing reduces food waste by 21%, while increasing a grocery chain's gross margins by 3% and consumer surplus by 0.3%.
I've done some work in Europe where electronic shelf labels were used precisely for expiration date markdowns, meaning food that's about to expire, right before it does so, gets a discount so it doesn't end up wasted.
Electronic shelf labels aren't new. Some stores in Europe and Asia have been using the technology since the 90s.
Digital store labels have been a fact of life in Europe for much longer than they have been in North America.
I suspect the reason that they became more popular in Europe first is because changing prices within a store is very labor intensive. Many countries within Europe tend to have quite high minimum wages, in some countries higher unionized wages, so there's more of an incentive to engage in rolling out these electronic shelf labels more quickly than perhaps we'd have seen in the US.
So in a context like that, where you have higher labor costs and rigidity in your labor markets, it can be attractive to begin substituting more and more technology for labor. For a long time, that pressure was not evident in the US economy. It became evident in the US economy in a big way in the post-COVID environment, when unemployment got very, very, very low. Accordingly, labor costs began to skyrocket. And so the value proposition of digital store labels became much more attractive to US-based firms.
While ESLs are cheaper than workers, they're not free. American ESL provider Saloom says that the initial cost of a 10,000 tag system can be up to $100,000.
Historically, the main downside of electronic shelf labels was just maintenance costs. But those costs have gone down.
The only impediment to how quickly they can change prices at this point is how long it takes the human in the loop to decide to change the prices.
My hope is that the next generation of electronic shelf labels will all explicitly have the split screen capability where you could have two prices on the shelf, one for near expiration items and one for the rest.
Industries like airlines, ride shares, and ticket sales companies already use dynamic pricing. Electronic shelf labels allow brick-and-mortar stores to use the same strategy.
The adoption of electronic shelf labels will mean that if companies notice that consumers in a competitor store are being offered a product at a substantially lower price, you will see price wars on those particular products. And that's something that we've seen in certain countries in Europe, particularly Norway.
Stores in Norway have been using ESLs for over a decade. Some grocery stores there hire price hunters who go to competing supermarkets to monitor how much they're charging for items. Electronic shelf labels allow retailers to update prices to match the competition faster than ever.
What I think regulators are concerned about is the degree to which this might facilitate kind of pricing collusion, in which stores are able to monitor in real time what their competitors are charging for a particular good and match prices. Now, that would just be an acceleration of a process that already occurs.
In 2024, the Norwegian Competition Authority, or NCA, imposed nearly $500 million in fines on 3 Norwegian grocery stores for using price hunters to monitor each other's prices. The NCA said the practice reduced competition and raised prices for consumers from January 2011 to April 2018. In a press release, Coop said they maintain they have not done anything illegal and told CNBC they had no further comments. The other grocers did not respond to CNBC's request for comment in time for publication.
It looks like they're colluding because all their prices are moving together, but that's actually a reflection of this being a highly competitive industry.
Dynamic pricing could have downsides for retailers.
Fears related to being able to maintain inventory levels while engaging in dynamic pricing are things that the stores are going to have to figure out for themselves. They will get that wrong, and they will find themselves short on some goods, and they will get that wrong and find themselves flush with a bunch of goods that they have to keep in storage that crowds out space for other goods that they might want to sell.
In January 2025, the Federal Trade Commission found that as many as 250 different businesses, including grocery stores, engage in surveillance pricing, the practice of using personal data to target individual consumers with different prices for the same goods and services.
Let's say you're getting ready to start a family and you're expecting a baby. Are you going to see the price of cribs and diapers creep up?
I don't think that's quite what's going to happen here. I think the evidence from Europe seems to suggest that these electronic labels are much more used as a way of bearing down on costs.
My understanding is that there's really none of that going on in grocery retail at least, and I don't think that's anywhere in the near future.
Fusion Group's website says that their electronic shelf labels can deliver personalized promotions and tailored content, respond to shopper behavior in real time, generate continuous insights on shoppers and staff, and unlock real-time visibility into aisle activity. Walmart did not respond to a request for comment on their use of electronic shelf labels in time for publication.
There's this statistical and economic concept called demand elasticity, which basically means by how much will sales respond if you were to change your price. And estimating these statistics at the daily level, at the store level, or even at the product level is basically impossible. So when someone imagines a grocery retailer understanding the fine details of demand and responding extremely dynamically, that's a false picture. That's not feasible.
Lawmakers across the country have introduced legislation aimed at protecting consumers from dynamic pricing in grocery stores, including bills that would ban digital shelf labels.
It's increasingly hard for us to protect our own data, and that's why we need stronger laws and protections from the government.
It is good to have someone looking out for the consumer and making sure there's no exploitation and consumer welfare is protected.
In response to CNBC's request for comment, Amazon said that they have no plans to utilize surge or dynamic pricing, and Whole Foods, who is owned by Amazon, said they have nothing else to add. Kroger said they do not use dynamic pricing. Loblaw said that their pricing and promotional practices have not changed since they introduced ESLs in 2018. All other grocery retailers mentioned did not reply in time for publication.
In a natural disaster environment, where water and toilet paper and other kinds of essentials become immediately scarce, or there are really significant concerns about breakdowns in supply chains, you could see those prices surge. There's definitely a strong devil's advocate argument to be made that having some sort of surge pricing in those kind of contexts would actually be useful because it discourages hoarding.
Pricing innovation is just a different form of innovation, and businesses are constantly going to be tinkering with trying to find an edge in what's a highly competitive industry. Now, it may well be that you do get one or two supermarkets that actually test in time full-blown surge pricing, dynamic pricing, and it may well be that that's successful for their business. But if that is successful and it increases the profit margin, that will encourage other companies to replicate what they're doing and compete down the prices again.
It's silly of them to risk upsetting you over gaining a few extra cents on an ice cream when it's hot outside.
They want customers to be return customers. So if customers don't like this form of pricing, then that will hurt the profitability of that individual supermarket.
The basic economic of grocery retail is that they want to acquire customers and retain customers, expiration date markdowns, and potentially more competitive pricing. These are the two flavors of dynamic pricing we might see more of. I really do not expect, based on my understanding and the data so far, sudden spikes in prices of everyday goods.